Hello, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Levine, Principal Worldwide Evangelist for Adobe Creative Cloud. And for the next 25 minutes, we're going to be talking about some of the latest innovations coming to the next version of Adobe Audition CC. Also be talking to you about some of the things that we added in the April NAB release, which are equally as cool and should not be forgotten. So first and foremost, if you've been using Audition, as you take a look at this new interface, it is indeed just that. We've really revamped the UI, all of the colors for all of your clips, including the way that we're handling our multi-track. You can see that we've now got sort of rounded corners around the track dividers, nice, more colorful labels. In fact, if you right-click and go to your track colors here, you'll see a new track color selector. We've also now mapped all of the native colors in Audition to the same label colors that Premiere has. So when you translate over, if you had used dynamic links before, you probably saw that you may have had, you know, magenta, blue, teal, brown in Premiere. You came over to Audition and it was sort of magenta, teal, brown, whatever. But they weren't the same. Now they're the same. What are words, Niels? What are words? So new UI, new colors. You're going to find some incredible performance enhancements in terms of playback, whether you're working with video, which leads me to the actual video panel that you see here. So brand new options in video preferences selection here inside the video panel. First and foremost, as you can see right on screen here, video time code. So very easy to add time code to your clips, particularly if you're doing things like ADR. You can adjust the background opacity here. You can also reference session or individual media time code. So again, if you've got a cue sheet for ADR, oftentimes that'll be referencing the media time code. Just really nice, in particular if you're dynamically linking video content from the Premiere side. Also, if you're doing sound design in Adobe Audition, this was something that we added in April as well, called clip spotting. So previously in Audition, it was not incredibly easy to move and navigate audio clips to a specific frame in time. Now, again, you have options here to enable frame snapping and such, but there wasn't really an elegant way to do it visually. So now, when you pick up a clip, this dotted blue line that you see, and you can see that we're moving in frames here, wherever you click, that dotted line represents the click point, the actual moment where your sound begins based on where you touch the clip here. And you can have scrubbing audio enabled here so that you can accurately align that sound to the specific frame perfectly accurately. So if you've not done sound design in Audition, because of some of those previous UI limitations, you're going to find it so much easier, so much more efficient with the new clip spotting option here as well. So really cool to have that. Now, again, a couple of just initial UI changes. So, as a lot of you, I tend to zoom in and out of tracks and sort of zoom left to right a lot and resize things and minimize things. And it can get sort of very confusing very quickly. And then I would go to something like our Zoom Out Full button, and in previous releases, it didn't necessarily bring all of your tracks into view. Well, we've revamped that button, and now you'll get a full vertical and horizontal display of all of your content on screen quite elegantly. If you have maximized tracks, those will remain maximized in perspective. Again, just giving you a simpler, easier way to just instantly see an overall picture, not to mention all of those new color labels translate to the portion bar up here. So I just love just the look of this. I was talking about this before in the Premiere demo about the, the user experience design that's going into all of our latest Adobe updates, and you're really going to feel it in this release. Things just, they feel better, they look better, they perform faster and more efficiently. So cool, and we're so glad to have this here. Now, along those same lines, big sessions can often get very confusing when you're doing mixing, particularly if you're doing mixing for film. So in the case of this session here, I wanted to work only on my dialogue tracks. Now, I didn't assemble this, so again, as I scrub through, there's dialogue scattered throughout. We've got buses, and again, I could sort of minimize things to get them out of the way. and then focus on the dialogue, and I'll typically make these a little bit bigger and work this way. But we heard from a lot of customers it would be so cool if we could simply show and hide tracks, taking them out of view. They're still in the session, I just don't need to see everything all the time. So for that, we introduced the Tracks panel, which you can see I have docked down here. And with the Tracks panel, I can simply say, okay, let's use the familiar Photoshop eyeball icons, and I'm going to turn off all of the non-dialogue tracks that I don't need to see. I'll leave the buses on, I typically leave those, and I'll leave the video reference on. But now, I only see my dialogue tracks. And from within inside the Tracks panel, if you go into Track Visibility, you'll also see that you can save your track layouts as presets, which actually gets saved with the session, the SSX file itself. So if I wanted to save dialogue under preset 1, there's already a pre-assigned shortcut to that. We've also got some presets in here for you, so I could say show all tracks again and keep working with things. Come back over here. Okay, let's go to preset 1, and there's my dialogue tracks only. So a nice little show hide. You know this from After Effects, you know it from Photoshop. Same kind of concept here. And naturally, even though we only see the 3 tracks in the editor view, we go into the mixer, it maintains that same view as well. So everything is super clean. You can override it and turn things back on one by one, just like this, okay? So really nice, really flexible, easy to work with, really reimagined UI here, okay? Now, before we get on to a couple of new effects, just one additional thing I wanted to show you here too, with regard to working with multi-channel audio files. Now, Audition is by default a 5.1 mixing environment. The maximum it currently supports for multi-track mixing is 5.1. However, if you are talking about file mastering, so you have an 8-channel MXF, and you need to readjust or apply limiting or compression or some kind of EQ to, you know, channels 1 and 2, which are the US English broadcast dialogue channels, and then channels 3 and 4, that might be the Spanish version, 5, 6, 7, 8, you get the idea. Any number of interleave channeled files can be leveraged inside of Audition. It can create, import and export and master any number of interleave channeled files. So an 8-channel, a 16-channel, a 24-channel file, it can handle all of that, right? The channel is different from the mixing engine. But one of the really cool things is that when you're working with multi-channel interleaved files, previously it was very difficult to manipulate the position of the channels in the file. And for anyone who works in any kind of video, we know this. It is not uncommon where, you know, I just said, so it makes sense that stereo left and right of the English soundtrack is on 1 and 2. And maybe in the final version it is that way, but oftentimes in capture, you know, you might have, instead of camera left and right on 1 and 2, you might have lav 1 on channel 1 and camera on channel 2, and then the other lav on channel 4, so you've got this completely spread, it's not stereo at that point, it's just dual channel mono, hard panned. Blah. Right? It's such a drag. Now Premiere has breakout to mono, Audition also has functionality to allow you to break those out into streams, but then you have to re-encode it as a multi-channel file again. Wouldn't it be nice if we could simply reroute the channels on the file itself from within the multi-track environment? And you can with the source channel router. Now, if you've ever done your audio finishing here tied to Premiere, where you go through Media Encoder, say exporting to an MXF 8-channel 24-bit file, you've seen this dialogue before. So if you pay attention to our greatness file here, I just kind of hover over this because this has the loudest amplitude right here, our 3rd channel, which happens to be the boom mic. I can change the channel that this is going to, and you can see it moving inside the UI right here. So this is a really elegant, simple, non-destructive way to rechannel the files directly inside the multi-track environment. Now just on that, let me want to quickly find this in my Files panel. Just want to show you a little trick here. I'm not a big fan, let me rephrase that. I have no memory capacity for keyboard shortcuts. It's not that I'm not a big fan, I just can't remember them. But this one I remember. So if you take a multi-channel file, you can see this particular one here, 5 channels, 24-bit, 48K. If you simply drag it in to a channel, it comes in interleaved all together. But if you hold down the Alt or Option key, it will now break these out, and it looks like I need to add one additional channel here. It will now break them out independently to all of the available channels in your multi-track. So holding down Alt or Option separates each of those so that you have them separated so that you can process them independently. It's just a little trick, but it's a really useful keyboard shortcut when working with interleaved audio files. Additionally, as I mentioned before, so here is what this 5-channel file looks like in the editing environment. And this is something that I've shown many times at IBC, but I love to stress this. Audition allows you to master multi-channel interleaved files, right? So after the fact, let's say you do, like we were describing before, your reversioned mix for different countries and different languages. And the channels 1 and 2, English soundtrack, and it's great. 3, 4, Spanish is very good. 7, 8, German is very good. But 5, 6, the French soundtrack, it wasn't loud enough. Or maybe it was too loud. Or maybe you needed to have it conform to -24 LUFS based on EBU standard because it was just mixed sort of raw. You have complete independent channel control for mastering and processing of effects on any channel inside of an interleaved channeled file. So let's say, in the case of this channel 3 here, you know, we wanted to apply some compression to just this channel, okay? Well, we can select it like this, and I can go into something like Effects, and grab something like our compressor here. This is some very extreme settings, but let's see what's happening here. All right, something like this, super fast attack. Click Apply, okay, and only apply compression to that channel. Or if I want to adjust amplitude just to that channel, you can see it's not affecting any of the other channels. Or if I simply want to apply an EQ to that channel, you can do that as well. Now, if I want to apply global changes, I can re-enable everything, and let's say this is an 8-channel or a 6-channel or a 12-channel file, but it's all meant to be played simultaneously, right? It's an interleaved 5.1 mix or an interleaved 10.2 mix. Now again, we can't remix 10.2, but we can remaster 10.2, right? So in the mastering process, it's not uncommon that you top and tail your files, right? Add a super quick fade in, super quick fade out. So I can zoom into the edge here, grab my non-destructive fade in, and I can fade across the channels, right? So this is showing you a global change. Or in the case of what I did before, I can globally adjust amplitude of all channels. Or I can apply, you know, a little ambience across all channels. Not that you would necessarily do that, but you get the idea. So, or more importantly, perhaps you need to normalize. Maybe everything has already been limited to -24 LUFS, but you actually want to normalize to some other level for YouTube, okay? Because at -24 LUFS, you may still have peaks that are above -6, right? I usually like to deliver my mastered content to YouTube after it's been limited to around -6 dBFS for YouTube. So you can normalize or peak normalize all channels simultaneously, all right? So you have some really great functionality for mastering. This never gets talked up enough. You can also work spectrally across these channels. So this is, I'm not going to go into this deeply here, but because we have some time, this is one of the best things about this, is that, you know, oftentimes, particularly where you have booms, lavs, and camera mics, it's not uncommon that within one of those channels, you may have some strain, like this is you can tell the boom has like the most ambient noise. So we could apply spectrally some noise reduction to just the boom channel in this interleaved file. Or perhaps the boom had a moment of, right? It's only here, it's not on the lav because he didn't in the lav mic, right? So you can repair that just here, right? Simply by selecting that channel. Let me just go back up to our divider here. Something like this, right? And I can go back to our spectral view, okay, and make our little selection, or maybe paint on our selection here, and take it out. All right? So you can independently process noise issues on independent channels. And notice it didn't create a hole anywhere else. This obviously is extreme, but visually you can see what happened there, right? This is an incredibly useful feature when you're trying to fix and repair and, again, remaster after the fact. Really, really valuable for multi-channel audio. Okay, so I'm going to step back on all of that, and let's go back into the multi-track here. Okay, so hold on, I'm going to close this session real fast. Let's reopen it to get it back into its original state. Okay, the last two things I'm going to show you here are based around some new effects. Now, I showed these moments ago in Premiere. They are also part of Essential Sound Mixing and Audition, but I will typically, because as an audio engineer, I don't generally use Essential Sound in Audition for myself. I just usually mix them within our effects rack. So we have a new denoise algorithm, and we have a new de-reverb effect as well. We still have our existing noise reduction filters, including the adaptive noise. This new algorithm is, well, it's newer, it's better, it's more modern sounding, and quite frankly, it allows you or enables you to use less noise reduction and preserves a better end result. Anyone who knows me when talking about audio or anything knows that I certainly don't mince words when it comes to those kinds of things. So let me show you this. Go into noise reduction. And the brand new effect is the denoise. Go ahead and select this here. Okay, this gives you an idea of the UI. Let me play back a couple seconds of this and see where we are here.
You're gonna have to leave home. Go to the crazy place, even if no one's coming. You're gonna have the itch to fail, and then start from scratch. If you're gonna take advice, make sure you remember how to dance. Because the beat of your own drum is all you got in the end.
Now, I don't know if you could hear me backing off. You were kind of hearing that hiss, and then the hiss is going away, and it was still very clean and very nice. So one of the brilliant things about this effect, first of all, it's got a lovely, simple UI. But then we have these processing focus selections. Now, by default, I used this session before, this is the default one, process noise on all frequencies. Now, I will be the first to tell you, and I've said it here many, many times, I typically don't recommend, or in the past would not have recommended processing noise across all frequencies because noise doesn't live in all frequencies simultaneously. Very uncommon, right? You're never going to have, I mean, I suppose you could if there were a noise generator. That's not coming from us. Where is that coming from? Was I generating noise internally? Is that what happened? Did I summon that? No one understands what's happening online right now. That was weird though, right? Okay. You don't generally process noise across all frequencies because it doesn't occur that way. That was the past. The default is broadband. This is shockingly effective without overdoing it. This is the default. So this is going to be your first blush experience. This is very, very good. Now, if you want to dive a little deeper, and if you're an audio nerd like yours truly, this is where this effect really benefits you because you can see that you have selection. So in the case of something like low-end rumble, you're filming outside. This is the perfect selection to focus on lower frequency noise. Now the real benefit here, for anyone who's leveraged noise reduction before, knows that, again, if you're processing noise in the high frequency where there is no high frequency noise, or in the mid frequencies where there isn't any, this is where in the past you tended to get artifacts, right? Those swishy, swirly, robotic, twinkling sounds. But if you know the noise is in the low frequencies, It will only process it in the low frequencies, never touching the mids and highs, therefore you don't have any of those terrible sounding artifacts. Low frequency artifacts are virtually inaudible, right? It's always the mid-range and the highs where you hear that, right? That doesn't happen with this. Now, similarly, there may be a case where the noise is embedded in the mid-range. And I mentioned wind before because sometimes wind is a real pain and it lives right in that 1 to 3K range. Sorry to say, if that's the case, I recommend this curve. And you can see it's showing you there's a bump in the middle. It's focusing on the mid-range frequencies. Now, the opposite of that, in some cases, particularly again with wind, and there's other techniques to really attenuate wind, but I've tested it a few times, and this one is very impressive, is the fourth curve. Because here, you're creating that, what was often referred to as the 70s, the smile EQ. Anybody who used graphic EQs back in the day, anyone have a graphic equalizer? Thank you for admitting that. Anyone on Facebook? I don't think so. No one said, I can't see chat. Thank you, Molly. Focuses on the lows, focuses on the highs, scoops out the mids. Makes sense. Keep the vocals clean, non-artifacted, remove the and leave everything else alone. Okay? And then lastly here, of course, high frequency, which is, I was going to say earlier, I've run this on a couple of old cassette transfers that I did years ago, digital cassette transfers. Now, for years, I've been using our hiss reduction. In fact, I believe he's sitting in the audience. Yes, Mr. Mike Russell over here, Audition Master, has talked about these noise reduction tools, and hiss reduction is magical. This has now replaced my use of hiss reduction, using that EQ curve, only focusing on the high-end noise. And again, it's not that it's just removing it, it's intelligently attenuating. So you still feel the ambience, you still feel the presence of 10K, 12K, 16K, 20K, but you don't have that. Right? We've all been there where it's too much reduction, too aggressive. This one is very, very smooth. And as you just heard, with a minimal amount, I'm at 18%. Let's even take it up a little bit higher. Here's the before.
You gotta be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot.
Kick it in.
You have to work between or rock in a smart place. Because if you're gonna follow your dream.
Yeah, I mean, I could even use less. I probably only need about 11% to get rid of that. Genius, okay? And the very last thing I will show you here is the de-reverb. Now, as I've described several times already this week, once again, default state of this, all frequencies. Similar UI, so if you can use one, you can use the other.
Where it takes you.
Really where this effect becomes invaluable is if you're trying to restore that one take that you just can't get again, okay? Removing reverb, removing echo, removing ambience, yes, this can do all of those things. Oftentimes, though, what we want is we really want the microphone to move from here back to where that person was speaking. So it can't remove that distance, unfortunately. However, there is some AI technology happening here, because what it does to simulate that is something called auto gain. Because as you attenuate the echo, the decay, you're obviously minimizing the amplitude. So the auto gain is making back up the amplitude lost when you are applying the de-reverb and bringing that sound to appear closer to you. All right? So in the case of this one here, let's wind this back a little.
And then start from scratch. If you're gonna take advice, make sure you remember how to dance, because the beat of your own drum is all you got in the end. You gotta be okay with the cold and ready to strike when the iron's hot.
Now it's really,
you have to work between or rock in a smart place.
It's very hard. It's echoing in here. So how does it remove the echo outside of the room? I can't do that. Okay? Again, it's really about preservation. It's about restoring something that just wasn't usable before to something that you now feel comfortable using or broadcasting or sharing. You've got to be in a clean listening environment. This is not the greatest place to do it. I way overdid that just now, okay? But the idea is that if you've got that one take, and I often say it's usually, it's only the camera mic, not the lav, or it was the room mic, not the boom. It's too echoey though. We removed noise, but it's too echoey. This can save that. This can restore that take and make it usable. There have been many of these around for a couple of years now. This is the best one I've heard, and the least destructive. Use minimally. Respect that original. It's okay to have some ambience. And by the way, here's another tip if you're taking notes. For de-reverbing, if you're finding that using a little too much is creating some artifacting, there will be some swishiness. It's quite possible. You're trying to remove echo ambience. Use less de-reverb and apply our noise gate, which you can find in the limiter effect. So gate some of the tail of the echo, right? Remove enough of the echo with this before you hit that artifact wall, and then use a noise gate to close down any additional tail or decay. It'll be a lot cleaner. Again, the AI here is going to push that forward for you a little bit. And in the case of vocals or voices, you could then use something like our parametric EQ to accentuate between 1 and 3K, just to give you a little bit more vocal presence to push the intelligibility of your vocals forward. So my friends, a new de-reverb, a new denoiser, new UI elements, beautiful colors, tracks panel, source channel mapping, incredible performance hikes, new video timecode options, and these are just some of the latest innovations in the new product and coming to the next version of Adobe Audition CC. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.